You know that moment when you reached everything you aimed for. You got the promotion, built the business, the numbers worked out. You became the smartest person in the room. Or at least everyone thinks so. From the outside, life is exactly where it should be. And from the inside, there is a strange silence. There isn't someone you want to call when you want to celebrate, but you feel like they wouldn't quite understand. You sit at the table, look at what you won, and an unexpected thought comes. Is this it? You couldn't even let yourself ask that question for a long time. Because asking, "Is this it?" feels like ingratitude. Because so many people would give everything to be in this position. Because you have no right to complain. You succeeded. But that feeling doesn't come and go. Late at night, after everyone has gone home, when you put the phone on the table and look out the window, it's there again. Silently. Like a loyal shadow. There is a name for this feeling. And understanding its psychology might just be the beginning of the most important decision you ever take in your life. Success and loneliness rarely appear in the same sentence. Culture told us this. Loneliness was the fate of failures and empty nights. Success, on the other hand, meant connection, significance, visibility, and being loved. That's why you ran to get there. And when you arrived, you faced something no one told you. The ladder to the top sometimes leaves behind the very people who came with you. This isn't a metaphor. This is a psychological reality confirmed time and again by research. When social psychologists study a phenomenon called the status gap, they find this. When a person moves to a significantly different point than those around them, economically, professionally, intellectually, the fabric of their relationships changes. You can't laugh at the same things anymore. You can't share the same anxieties. What your old friends feel when they look at you is no longer entirely pure. There's something mixed in, something hard to say. Maybe they don't even fully know it themselves, but you feel it. And this feeling leaves you both guilty and alone. You remember those years you worked so hard. You were still at your desk while everyone else was asleep. When you woke up at 5 in the morning, before the fluorescent lights in the hallways of daily life were even turned on, you were already thinking. The birthdays you missed, the dinners you left early, the moments you said, "I'll be there in a bit," and never showed up, you knew they all had a price, and you were ready for it. You wanted to pay it. But there was one item on the list of things you paid for that wasn't there. No one had told you. As you rise, people start to speak to you differently. Instead of being honest with you, they choose to be strategic. They act like friends, but don't offer friendship. They don't tell you their real thoughts. They tell you what they think you want to hear. And at some point you realize, there are many people in the room, but there isn't a single person who truly knows you. This is the dark side of the peak, and very few people say it out loud. Now let's look at it from a neurobiological perspective, but not in cold laboratory language. Rather, to understand how this information touches your life. The human brain is evolutionarily programmed for social connection. The structure known as the belonging system operates in the oldest and most fundamental layers of the brain. And this system says, to be truly seen, understood, and accepted, this is a need as basic as food or water. The regions that the feeling of social isolation activates in the brain are the same regions as physical pain. This isn't a metaphor. It is literally the same neural pathways. So here is what this science is saying. The loneliness you feel at the peak hurts because it's supposed to hurt. This isn't a weakness. This is a message your healthy nervous system is giving you. And labeling that message as ingratitude or being spoiled is as dangerous as turning off a fire alarm and ignoring the fire. There is something else that successful people rarely say. As you go up, trust becomes increasingly rare and more precious. Not just trust in people, but trust within yourself as well. Social psychologists call this the validation paradox. Before achieving success, feedback was mostly honest. You were either liked or you weren't. You were either useful or you weren't, quite clearly. But after success, everything everyone around you says to you is now filtered. The power dynamic has changed. And this change gives birth to a constant question within. Do these people love me, or what I represent? Once you hear that question in your head, it's very hard to silence it. And while that question is standing there, making new connections, being truly close, letting someone completely in, all of these start to feel dangerous. Because now you know what you have to lose. And then there is this. Success hijacks your identity without you even noticing. First, you started doing something, a business, a career, a mission. Then, that thing became what you do. Then, what you do became who you are. And then, who you are became your only safe ground. Because if that ground disappears, if the success stops, the numbers drop, the title goes away, what is left? Psychologists call this contingent self-worth. Self-worth stops being a constant thing coming from within and becomes a conditional calculation tied to external successes. And this calculation is redone every single day, in every meeting, every quarter, every comparison. There is a reason for this exhaustion. It isn't just working hard. It is the feeling of having to prove who you are all over again every single day. Maybe there are two voices inside you right now. One says, "Don't complain. You succeeded. Think of how many people would want to reach this position." The other is much quieter, much more real. "I am tired, and I can't tell anyone about this loneliness because no one would understand." The second voice is telling the truth. And know this. Just because you can't talk about this loneliness doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you can't find the words for this loneliness doesn't mean you are emotionally broken. Alexithymia, the difficulty in identifying emotions, is one of the most common patterns seen in success-oriented, high-functioning people. Because when they were young, those people learned to achieve things rather than express their feelings. A language of performance grew within them, not a language of emotion. And this wasn't a mistake. It was the most logical way to survive in that environment. But you are no longer just surviving. Now you want to live. And for that, a different language is required. I also want to say this. A person can be both successful and lonely. This is not a contradiction. It is a reality that no one fully prepares you for. And being stuck within that reality doesn't tell you that something went wrong. On the contrary, it tells you how correctly everything is functioning. Your brain needs connection, a real, mutual connection, the kind that loves you for who you are, not for what you represent. And that connection is possible. But to find it, before looking at your position at the peak, you need to find who you are at the peak. Perhaps the bravest thing you can do right now is not to take an inventory of what you've won, but of what you've lost. Which relationships did you sacrifice? Which version of yourself did you leave behind? Which of your desires, those that have nothing to do with success, those that belong only to you, died silently? Asking these questions isn't about belittling your achievements. Asking these questions means seeing the full bill of success, And someone who sees the full bill can truly decide what they want to continue paying for from now on. You may be lonely at the peak, and this reality is both painful and honest. But there is magic within the ordinary, and part of that magic is here. Accepting that you want to be seen, remembering that you are a human before your title, and deciding no longer to ignore that voice still standing there beneath the accumulated success. The one saying, "I am tired, I need connection, I want to be heard." That voice is not a weakness. That voice is what made you human from the very beginning, and that is more valuable than everything you have won.